Greetings again with the Oral History Program for WCBL Radio. I'm Ray Mofield, and our visitor today is widely known around Benton and Marshall County, Roe Thomas. But we want to find out some more about him, some things that we either had forgotten or maybe we never did know. Roe, thank you for coming.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Ray. It's a pleasure.
You're old enough to be interviewed. We try to have people who are at least 65. So I assume that you're that old.
Well, I will be, a true age will be 78, the 27th of October. My Army age will be 80. As I went in the Army when I was 17 to see the world. And so I had to go in by notary seal, and there was Ambrose Thompson was the notary that put the coyotes on me. And I slept, that night, I slept in those hard seats at the Paducah City Hall. And they had a big banister where you couldn't lay good and well, so you had to work yourself in there. If they're thinking it caught a fire, it would have burned up.
Well, if you're a world traveler, we'll hear some things as the program goes along. Where were you born?
I was born at Harvey, Kentucky.
Harvey, well, the great city between here and Mayfield, out in the Van Zora neighborhood.
And I am the 13th child, the 13th child of my father.
Now, was not
14.
Your father was a physician, wasn't
Yes,
he?
Dr. E.G. Thomas came to Marshall County in 1873 from the University of Louisville and set up practice over about Pleasant Grove Church.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a horse, a saddle, saddlebags, and a few pills and a little of this and a little of that. And he waited 3 years before he got enough money and enough courage to get married.
Oh, well, who did he marry?
Carthy Bell Woods, a daughter of Josiah Woods, down about Oak Level.
Did he have any connection at all with Marshall County before he came here? Was any of his ancestors from this area?
Not that I know of. His ancestors were in Graves County, down in Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the oldest of 12 or 8, I forgot which.
Yeah. All right. Now you were born almost 78 years ago. Was that here in Benton?
No, it was out at Harvey.
Oh yeah, out at Harvey.
And I don't know exactly who the doctor was. He may have been the doctor when I was born. I don't know. You know, he liked to save money.
Was there a country school there that you went to?
Yeah, New Constitution. New Constitution. And they had, the old school was east of where the other one came. They built that on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to such teachers as Clint Smith, Mattie Powell, Hilda Aaron, Leela Green, and Thelma Lyles. And then I went to Benton. So I could get a little bit, they thought I would get more education, but I wanted to go to Brewers. And instead of letting me go to Brewers where I wanted to and wear my overalls and didn't have to dress up, they said, you'll go to Benton and like it. And so I went to Benton and I didn't like it.
All right. Now, that was after you'd graduated at New Constitution.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'd got my 8th grade education in there.
Who were some of the high school teachers?
Well, there was Professor Morgan, Adler's daddy, and there was
W.E. Morgan, I think it was.
And H.W. Wittenberg, and Ruby Tisdale, and May Rogers, she finally was a May Thomas, married a Methodist preacher, and Lillian, I can't think now, but she married one of the old teacher at the college.
Yeah. Well, let's describe a little bit about what school was like at New Constitution.
Well, we always carried our lunch. And we had
no lunchroom.
No, well, they didn't have a lunchroom. They just had a place you could set that basket.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several of us going to school, and we always carried a great big basket and all ate together. for several years. And then we got to carrying our lunch in a sack. But as long as the whole bunch was in, the whole family was going, why, it was in a market basket.
Mm-hmm.
And we played all kinds of baseball, and we always, a lot of the time, we could slip off from school and play fox and dogs and then get a long way from school. We never would get back till about school was over.
Yeah. That sounds like some of my stunts. I guess boys were pretty much the same everywhere. Were there woods close by? Did you...
Oh, sure, there's woods all the way around, everywhere. And of course, the teacher had a good switch on next morning, and Ralph Clint Smith would say, "All right, Rose, you and Morgan Rickman and so take your coats off." And he would whip a while on one, and he'd whip a while on the other.
Yeah.
And he said, "You would think you want to do that again?" And Morgan Rickman made a remark. He said, "Well, I didn't want to go the other time, but the other told me to do it and called me a sissy if I didn't."
So, now that's Sam Rickman's dad, isn't it?
No, it's Morgan Rickman. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
Sam.
Uh-huh. And he's the big radio star
Oh, yeah,
at
anyway,
WCBL now and does the ball game.
Does a wonderful job.
Anything else, he does a good job
Yeah.
at it. Yeah. Well, that's fine. And I guess you, the students had their own desk.
Yep. And they always put me up there right in the front so as I could watch the others. So I'd know exactly what to do when I got older.
Yeah.
And a lot of times put some blocks under the seat, and they'd always let that fall off when everything got good and quiet. Make a racket.
Did you ever do things like, say, reaching up and pulling a girl's hair?
Oh, yeah. That was a pastime of the whole school.
Yeah.
Most of the time it didn't happen right in books, though, because you got a slapping for that.
Yeah. Well, until I started this series of programs, I'd never heard of New Constitution, but now I think you're about the fourth person that...
And my mother, that's how come me to have the mother that I did. She was teaching school there, and she taught back in the 99s and long in there, and her and Dad married in 1901.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the marriage license in the clerk's office some time back. It was a Methodist preacher by the name of Rudd, John Rudd, from up Brewers,
Mm-hmm.
and he performed the ceremony.
Now, I believe you said there were, no, your dad was one of 13 children, was he?
No, I am one of
you were one of
I'm
13.
one of 13 or 14 children. I'm the 13th of 14 children
Uh-huh.
on my daddy's side.
Yeah.
And I think with that other side, we were 6 of us.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well,
And-
that really made an interesting family.
And of course, I had a brother that was in the Navy and got killed when he went into Solomons, the 7th of August, 42, I guess it was. Well, at any rate, when he went into Solomons, and it was in August.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody went and worshipped him because he'd come home on vacation, and he had a pretty uniform, and he had a big stomach. And I decided I believe I wanted to get thought of too. So I decided I wanted to join the Army. And we was over at a ball game at Raymond English's, Jack English and them over there, way back in the field now. And 2 of them said they were going to join the Army. I said, "Why don't you go with us?" And I said, "I believe I will." Well, I had $6 or $7 and I'd saved up some way or other. And so I got to come to Benton and got on the train with them. I went down there, and the recruiting officer said, "Well, how old are you guys?" These other 2 guys spoke up, Lloyd Thompson and Milburn Hauser. And they spoke up that they was 19. And he said, "That's all right, I'll take care of you boys." I said, "How about you, Cotton Top?" And I said, I'm not old enough. And he said, "Well, we'll talk to you about it later." So we got those boys lined up and got their lunches and their railroad tickets and everything, and sent them on. But me, I had to come and get my paper signed because I said I was 19. And they had said they were 21. So nevertheless, they were free agents.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Now you'll meet them boys when you get up Fort Ben Harrison. They'll get sworn in one day and you'll get it the next." So I took his word for it. Went on to Fort Ben Harrison and got sworn in one day and got closed the next. And they called us out, said, all right, all you boys that swore in this morning, get on out here. Had them big fatigue clothes on. The legs was big enough to go around, you could slip your body through. And they put me a hepping load of watermelons. There had been a truck pitched up there, and they was a pitching them, you know, and I hadn't had any watermelon that summer. And I got a hold of one of them watermelons, and I thought, if I drop this watermelon, I can get the heart out. And I dropped that booger, and I went down to get that heart, and when I did, that mess sergeant got me with the arm. He said, Bud, you don't do that in this man's army. So I didn't get my watermelon, but I got to shovel coal and coke at the bakery. And I didn't get any supper. And I decided the next time I'd
do your best to catch it.
Yeah.
Well, oh, the Army does things differently.
Oh, they made a man of me.
Mm-hmm.
I learned right quick that there's somebody else that was boss besides them, me. So we got sworn in one day and got our clothes the next, and got on the train at Fort Ben Harrison.
That's up around Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And,
I rode the interurban train, electric job, and they used to run out from Indianapolis out to Fort Ben Harrison. And then we got on another train and went to Columbus, Ohio, at Fort Hayes. That's where we got all of our medical inoculation and everything. They even vaccinated me for smallpox again, and I had a vaccination as big as a quarter.
Uh-huh.
So, at any rate, they got us all lined up, and we stayed there and got a little close order drill and one thing. Then they sent us by train to Fort Slocum, New York, by way of Washington, D.C. and so forth. We got in Pittsburgh, we had a layover. And so a few of them got out and got a hold of some White Lightning, because we didn't have any legalized whiskey. And they got in a poker game, and there was some bloody noses and they had black eyes and everything else. The next morning, there wasn't no money to be found. So nobody knew who got the money. They all got drunk, and they got disappeared. But we had a car that had a mattress cover full of bread, 6 loaves in a whack, and we had corned beef hash in cans. We had tomatoes in cans, and they gave us 2 cents a cup for coffee. But you didn't buy no coffee for 2 cents. It was 14, and that was back when coffee was coffee.
Yeah.
So
this was in the 30s.
This was in the 20s, 27.
27. Okay.
So we went ahead, and there's another fellow. I was going to go to Panama. I wanted to see Panama. But this guy talked me into going to Hawaii. He said, now, there's mountains over there that never has been climbed. So we asked about getting transferred to Hawaii. And so me and him went to Hawaii and stayed within a quarter of a mile of each other all the time we were in service. But he had to go to the hospital. When I come home, we left out of there the first day of July 1930. And I got home about the 27th. And Benton, there was dust ankle deep around the court square. And I was kind of...
The streets weren't paved.
No, they wasn't no paved. They wasn't even any decent gravel. They put in the sewer and water lines, you know. And it was a mess. And I come in, and I got off of that Sea Ray bus at, I think it was Ab Strauss drugstore. And I went on over across the street to Morgan and Heath. My dad was there with and his teeth are sticking out a little bit, and he was blowing, he was snowing. So I shook his chair a little bit, and he like to jumped on me. And he said, where'd you come from? I said, I come in on the bus. He said, well, let's go home. And he got up, and his legs didn't work too good. We finally got home, and there was a big meeting going on at Pleasant Grove. And he said, well, do you want to go to church tonight? I said, I guess so. I'll see some of the folks I hadn't seen in over 3 years. So he said, now, there's a few holes down in the creek where you can take a bath. And I said, all right. So I got down there and got me a bush and whipped all the foam and the debris that needed to be kicked off, and I got where I could get part of it off, and at any rate it was wet. And then the next day, why, we was going down to Paducah to see my sister that I hadn't seen in over 3 years.
Mm-hmm. So you were welcomed home. Now, did you enjoy Hawaii? Why?
Oh, I enjoyed. I've been back once, and I'm going back again in the next few months, if I can meet with the government. If the government will let me, on a pay easy basis.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go back to the old places we was on maneuvers. We had the biggest maneuver the Army's had in 1929. And I'm going to try to get microfilm if the papers have it. When I was there in 77, we went over to the paper and got 9 or 11 pages of newsprint, microfilm,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could read about some flights that came in. There was one was the Rogers and his plane that
Winnie Mae, was it?
I don't know whether it's a Winnie Mae, I'm not sure. But nevertheless, they were going to refuel out in the ocean. But they missed the boat. Their radio went out, and they drifted for 9 days. And of course, in those days, it was with a seaplane.
Mm-hmm.
And they were wood and canvas on the wings and so forth. And they made sails out of the canvas and burned part of the wood to purify that salt water so they could drink it.
Mm-hmm.
And they ran out of tobacco on the ninth day. And it come a rain, and they caught 2.5 gallons of water to drink. And a submarine came out where they were and picked them up and pulled them to a destroyer. And then this destroyer carried them into the dock where Governor Farrington, was his second term as governor, and he said, "Governor, I have a letter for you," and that was the first letter ever delivered from the mainland to Hawaii, other than by steamship.
Well, that's really.
And I still have the microfilm of that. I have the clippings that was in the paper in 25, and also the microfilm.
Well, you really had some exciting.
And
things,
I want to go back so that I can get the maneuvers. If there's anything on film, I want it.
Did you ever get to go to the Panama Canal Zone?
Went through the Panama Canal, and I have a letter that I wrote my mother that I didn't drink anything, strong drink, while I was in Panama. But a buddy of mine, he said, "Well, it's just a bunch of drunken cusses, slobbered, and one thing and another." Said, "What do you say, let's buy us a stalk of bananas apiece?" And we bought those big stalks of bananas, carried them home, hung them at the end of our bunks. And we woke up the next morning. They was the nice banana stalks you ever saw in your life, and not a banana to be found.
Somebody else wanted to buy
Yeah,
them.
and I wanted to go to Nicaragua. And ordinarily, Army transports would stop at Nicaragua to pick up the mail and would probably let us have, would let the folks on the Army transports. This was all Army transports. And so we come to find out about 2 hours before we were supposed to pull into Nicaragua that we wasn't going to get any shore leave on account of the trouble. Just like they've got trouble now, and they had it then, and they had it way before I was born, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so we missed that. We came on up to California. And we went through the Golden Gate, and you don't go through the Golden Gate any time but what you have rough water. And we came on over to Fort McDowell, which is, they don't have it anymore. And there's one thing I want to tell you, Ray, before I go any further. We were on a plane in 77, and it stopped to refuel in San Francisco.
That's you in Thelma?
Me and Thelma, a whole bunch from Marshall County. I think it was 30-some from Marshall County, maybe. And we were stopped up there, and that thing was hanging up. And you could look down and see Alcatraz, Angel Island, Goat Island, and all those places. And I found a picture at home just like it. And I showed some of them that we've made that trip and said, "I want to make a picture of that sometime." I said, "Okay, you can get it anytime you want it."
Mm-hmm.
And I've still got that at home.
Well, I know you had fun there. Now, when did you get married?
Oh, I went ahead and, I'll tell you, 1936, my brother bought a new Chevrolet, and it was a honey. He had everything put on extra that you could imagine. And we went up to Bacchusburg to a Grand Ole Opry picnic. They had Uncle Dave Bacon and all that bunch up there at a big farm. And a girl that I had met, she introduced me to my wife in 1936. And I'll be darned if it didn't take to 41 for us to ever get married. And we've been married 47 years.
Well, now, where was Thelma from?
She was from Lynn Grove, and she was teaching at Benton. After we met up there, that year they called her to teach at Benton. And
well, that made it handy for
oh,
you.
it made it awful handy. And she lived she had an apartment at Brother Henson's after we married till we get to have the home place.
Was that the Baptist preacher?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the house is burned now. That was down about 14th Street, I guess it was. And I put a car there one night, and I went in to build a fire. And I left the keys in it, and my overcoat and tie, and a few items, and when I came out, there wasn't no car there. So I began to wonder what to do. So they said, you run up to City Hall, and I run up to City Hall. And they didn't have really a City Hall, it was just an old building. But nevertheless, I told reported to see about it, and they got the sheriff to see about it. But I got to go home, and they finally found the car during the Christmas holidays. I'd gone up there to visit at her home, and it was very nice. And then, why, they found my car, and it had been in water and mud up to the running boards. And then we went ahead and went together for 3 years. And as Brother Henson asked, said, just which one, who suggested y'all get married anyhow? Said, y'all went together 3 years. What have you got out of an ocean?
Yeah.
And we've had a mighty good life. 47 years. We have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. And
now, where do the children live?
well, the boy, which is the oldest, he is selling computers and supplies, Concord Data Processing Company, and he's the headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And the girl lives out at Fern Creek in Jefferson County, and she's a teacher. And she has 3 boys, and the boy has 1 daughter, which is, she thinks she's doing a whole lot of studying, and it's pretty sharp. She's taking typing and a lot of work so she can be her dad's secretary.
So you're grandfather.
Yes, sir. 4 times.
Yeah. Well, now I know, among other things, we had a little fun one year when we went up to Washington on the bus and sang Southern Harmony.
Yes, sir.
How did you get interested in that?
Well, I tell you, my sister was dying with cancer. And we were having to go to town and get her a box of milk. Now, not a jug, but a box. And take her 2 papers. And then we'd stay a little while, and she'd say, well, I want to be alone. And we'd come back to town. And she was absolutely running me and my wife both crazy. So I said, I believe I need a vacation. And they said, well, what if she dies while you're gone? I said, she'll be dead just like you would if I was here. So I got talking to, I think, Jerome Cox and some others, and said, Ro, they're wanting to fill that bus, and you can get a hold of money, can't you, to pay your lodging? And I said, yeah, I'll pay whatever anybody else pays. And so I told the ones that had charge of it, I said, I'll pay just as much as Margaret Heath, because I know Margaret's free will. And so I got to go. And it was a wonderful trip. And when I came home, my wife met me out there at the court square and said, well, get in right quick, get your suitcase and get in, because your sister is dying. And so I went over to the hospital, and then she died in a day or so.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that was a sad ending to the
Yeah,
trip.
but I knew there was something happened when we were out at the Smithsonian Institute that night. I told the bus driver, I said, something is wrong at home. and I'm going to call, and I put in 5 calls and never did get an answer. So they were all at the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've kept the big singing alive, at least. Now, what were you doing some of those years? Weren't you quite a famous floor finisher? And
Yeah, but I was a farmer, and I had a desire to farm until my brother was killed in the Navy. And then there had to be some changes, and I wasn't financially able to buy the farm, so I had to go to Detroit, and I got turned down in the Army. And I went to Detroit and worked during the war.
Mm-hmm. Then when you came back here, you carried on this
I had to get something to do, and so I decided I'd buy me a floor sander. I'd rented one and sanded the floor at home, and I thought that'd be a good thing. And I went up to Lexington to Thompson Sanitary Supply and bought a sanding machine. And it was guaranteed every way, and it done everything but what it said it'd do. And I finally got another one. And then when things got a little better, I got a good outfit, and I enjoyed the work and stayed at it till I got old enough to retire. And there's floors all over the country where I finished that are still finished.
I know you showed Janie one time about how to really sand the floor.
Uh-huh.
She's always talked about that since.
And I know I got over at your house, and your daughter had gone out somewhere and got part of an edger and didn't get it all. And I had
she rented it at one of these rental places.
And it didn't have enough tools to put the paper on.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home and got a little one and had some paper and everything, and I showed her how to get started and so forth. There wasn't any way you could stop her. You could tap her on the back. And I thought she was going to hit me with that edger because she thought I was getting familiar with her. And I said, no, I didn't mean any harm, but that's the only way I could stop you without I threw a bucket of water on you.
Yeah.
And we just got along fine.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. But you know, 30 minutes isn't long, and
No,
we're
not
down
long
now
anymore.
to just about 2 minutes left. Do you have any funny stories you'd like to tell, or anything special?
Well, I will tell you one. I was down at Uncle Fate Washam's, and a bunch of fellows had made up to catch me on Shanghai bound, and they made out like they were recruiting sergeant at Paducah, and they said report to Paducah at a certain time, and I began to give away everything I had except I didn't know what I was going to do with a barrel of gasoline that was out there, a 55-gallon drum. I just bought it that day, so I said, boys, I'm Shanghai bound.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really believed I was going to.
Yeah.
That's when the Yancey trouble was going on.
And it turned out that they were just jokers.
They was just jokers. It just sounded just like that recruiting sergeant.
Yeah. Well, Ro Thomas, we really enjoyed talking with you, and we certainly hope you and your wife Thelma have many more years together.
Well, thank you, Ray.
And that you'll get into that 100 range. Now,
I'm hoping.
well, we have a house guest here right now who's 102. Her uncle, Ed Blumenberg, and will be, if he lives till November 26th, he'll be 103.
He's going to be like
And
Fred Geyer.
he's made a garden this summer.
Well, good for him.
Well, thanks again, Ro Thomas, for being our guest on Marshall County Oral History. I'm Ray Mofield. Now back to our studio.